checklist, sign-in sheet coming around. Okay, we do not have minutes. I gotta ask you. Overloaded, all voting and back and forth, and 2 meetings in 1 week. So we will take care of those in another meeting. The model status, Mike, you and Catherine spent quality time together.
Yeah, so we spent time together, got a bigger match. And where we stand now is we're at 101,000 people left on it. With a minimum free cash position of $942,000. The model has been updated to include the elementary school with the override, and it's up to speed everything, although I did not get a chance to put in security cameras to check the schedule B.
But it's free cash.
Yeah, it's free cash.
And that's one of the things we have to talk about. We have to talk about what we want the minimum free cash position to be, what we want to add to reduce the debt bump, which is effectively what you did by being 101,000 some odd under the levy limit, and then talk about what we want to vote for elementary school. An override amount to assume what the selectmen were discussing.
So I took the number off of the warrant.
Their level of what you see.
Yeah, so I took the number that was in the warrant and put that.
Level services.
Right.
Okay. So there's everything. Okay. So let's decide where we do this and take care of Article Thursday, where the question is what we want to recommend for the Article 3rd budget, most of which we voted. It's just the elementary school budget with some questions. And the level number, level services with FY18 was $593,068.
Is that level services or is that
no, plus?
More of that plus?
Well, it's level services with FY18, not with the current year, basically, right?
Right, there's 2 items that got cut in the chapter, other one, chapter 120 didn't come through. So in order to reinstate those 2, which is the same level service from the prior year.
Anybody have more information or thoughts than they shared last week?
What was the amount of
593,068, $593,068.
Which is your banding sheet was the
So this, the discussion we had last week, the discussion we had last week, there were citizen concerns about how this committee was reviewing the override request. And there was a sense that we weren't really evaluating it based on facts and numbers. And so I did a little research and put together the sheet that just moved out. Everybody wants to see. When I looked at, there was a handful of towns and some data from those towns, which we all know as a committee, we reviewed this data before, we had it in front of us. But some of the information showed on here. I took median household income for 4 different towns. I picked Dover because that had the highest income in the Commonwealth on a median basis, household income. Boxford, Topsfield, Middleton. Dover has $204,000 median income. Boxford 155 or 131. Middleton's 107. tax rates for those towns, Topsfield is the highest at $17 per thousand. And it goes Boxford, and Dover is the lowest. Then I looked at in-district expenditures per pupil, because that seems to be, for some reason, a line item that a lot of people are focused on. We're not spending enough on our students. It's my view that it's not just about how much you spend, it's how you spend it, and how you put the program together. If you look at the NAS list of per-district expenditures, and this is dated February 7th, so there might be some more current information, something popped up last week right at the meeting. Boston is number 36 on that list, $20,836 per pupil. I would argue comfortably, I don't think Boston's school system and Boston's education program for their students is better than Topsfield's, but they spend more. Dover is $19,000, a great school system and a great town, and they're able to afford that. Masconomet, it comes in the 103rd position, $16,908. That's the regional school. The Boxford local schools are $16,800. The Topsfield local schools are $16,600. And the Middleton schools are $15,900. This is based on the data that I was able to dig up. So people argue around the edges, but order of magnitude, I think those are in line. And then I looked at the pupil cost per median income, because I think this is a really important issue. Affordability is a word that I used a lot last year. I used it at Principal Town Meeting. I've used it in many of these meetings. The school system, we want and we have to consider the affordability. Dover spends 9%, and these numbers, understand, they're not all inclusive. They don't account for commercial tax support of them, but just based on the relationship between pupil costs and median income, Dover, on their tax base, spends 9.4% of their money on school systems, local schools. I didn't do Dover Sherborne. Boxford spends 10.8, Topsfield spends 12.7, and Middleton spends 14.9. So we're on the higher end of the top three. Middleton's even higher than that, but I would suggest Middleton has a lot of commercial real estate, so that's going to go with these numbers. Yeah. The other thing, a couple other things I want to share. If you bear with me for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So last year, you may remember we had a whale chart. Maybe it was 2 years ago now. And it started down here. We were talking about what's going to happen when we put the school roofs on and when we put the town hall in. And we're going to have this bubble in it. We're here now. We're ready. My colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, but we looked at these a little earlier. So if these years are behind us, we're up at the peak of this chart. This is going to fall off. And this is the capital depreciation. Capital overrides will drive this up here. The interesting thing about capital overrides, they eventually all drop off the chart. Every single dollar will drop off the chart of a capital override over time. We'll replace it with others, because we're going to try to, you're going to see these to come back in. As things fall off, we'll add new debt for other things that we need down. Makes sense. I tried to do this as best I can, and it's not truly accurate. When you do an operating override, it goes like this. It never ends. The only way you can end an operating override is if you stop providing that service, or from some miracle it costs less. So when we have this dialogue about, well, last year we spent $10 million for the town, 2 years ago, $10 million for the town hall, order of magnitude $5 million last year for roofs, and now we're arguing and debating over $1 million. Catherine, I don't know if you've got the term on those bonds. Are they 20-year bonds?
25 for the town hall project and 19 for the school roof.
Okay, so a 25-year bond, $10 million will cost us, what's the number? $400,000 a year. Whatever that number is, it's a whole lot less than $1 billion a year. This town hall, $10 million, has a less impact on an annual basis to the taxpayer by at least half than does this override that we were asked to consider for the operations of the schools. By no means am I diminishing the importance of the schools. We all think the schools are important. But we need to understand the impact on the finances. You can't compare apples to oranges, and that's what you're doing when you're talking operating and capital. A couple of other points I want to make, which I can't read without my glasses on. The last couple of years, we've had conversations that are vastly different. One year, we're looking for certain amounts of money for the schools for one thing. The next year, forget that, it's something different. It's meandering up and down. It's whatever the interests of the day are. And I don't mean to just focus this on the local schools. Masconomet's a great example. Last year, couldn't possibly survive without changing the bus schedule or getting the kids in later, because the teenagers can't get up at that time of day. Did anybody hear a peep about that this year? I didn't. It's gone. I wouldn't be surprised to see it come back, but now something else is more important. Last year, was there a crush from the local schools for the things that we heard this year? No, it was about school roofs. They changed. If we could come up with a strategy, a long-term strategy, that we know what's going to happen next year, what's the override request going to be next year, the year after, and the year after. And can we do that in pieces rather than do it all at once? That, from my perspective on this committee, that would help immensely to understand what the long-term strategy is and what the impact is. On that note, we heard some comments that these overrides that they were looking for this year are going to go on for a long time. They're going to be looking for overrides every year, and I think my interpretation was in the $400,000, $500,000 number. I've said this in the past, that is unsustainable. It's unsustainable for a town of this size. Eventually, that overwhelms the ability of the town to pay. The only way we're going to compete with Dover and some of these other towns that spend immense amounts of money is to change the character of the town, to change the people that live here, to change the incomes of the people that live here. Because if you look at this number that talks about $131,000 for median household income, that's got to go up if we're going to support these kinds of dollars. We want good schools, we want the best we can afford, we don't want more than we can afford. Because one of two things has to break. It's either it's going to go terribly sideways, or the people here are going to move, and Topsfield's not going to be Topsfield, it's going to be a different place. If that's the objective, I appreciate that, but you know, I've been in this town since 1961, 3 different times. I've moved away a few times and I moved back, and I keep coming back. First my dad picked it, I moved away, I moved back to this area, and I said, you know what, I can't find a better town on the North Shore than Topsfield to raise my kids in. And that's why I came here. I got divorced, I got thrown off the committee, I went over to Danvers. Yeah, I did. I came back, and the minute I was back in town, somebody foolishly invited me to join the finance committee again. I love the town, I think it's a wonderful place. We're not going to be able to afford the same amount to pay to the schools that the Dovers and some of the other large schools are going to do, that are very, very wealthy. I got about 3 more points on the way.
But we've also got Mark the year for 715.
Okay,
Can you make them quick?
I can.
Good.
I'd like us to seek alternative funding mechanisms, as did the police, the fire, Parks and Rec this year. They did a spectacular job coming up with alternative ways to fund the things they wanted. Very creative, and we voted in favor of all those things to support them. And I want to make that clear. We don't decide whether or not the money gets spent. We make a recommendation. It's the town that decides. I don't want that to ever be unclear. Some people have asked us to vote in favor of something. We're not voting in favor, but we're recommending action. We're not, we don't have the authority to do that. Per pupil spending is not the only success factor. Modest means, and I covered everything I wanted to. Thank you.
So, let's give Martha her 15 minutes to talk about the citizens petition article for what, against wildland cottages.
I'm just distributing a sort of a summary of the reasoning behind asking for the town to adopt a new bylaw that would prohibit the exhibition of certain wild or exotic animals. There's a list of 14 animals that we're asking for. It's elephants, 7 big cats, 7 types of big cats: bears, giraffes, camels, zebras, kangaroos, and non-human primates. Just to be, no, I'm not going to read what I've just passed out, but just to, again, to sort of touch on these points. As far as the reasoning, the first one is that wild or exotic animals pose a risk to the public. And basically this is the result of either animals acting out from fear or being startled or attacking their handlers. Some animals carry diseases. Primates carry viral, bacterial, fungal, and parasitic diseases. Elephants, captive elephants are known to carry a human strain of TB. It's estimated, according to the Humane Society of the U.S., that about 12% of captive animals have a human strain of TB, but they suspect that the rate, the percentage might be much higher because the testing is not reliable. So there's a public safety risk. I don't think anything has ever happened on the fairgrounds that I know of, but there are countless examples of animals either biting, attacking, getting loose, or elephants. In the case of Cumberford's elephants that come, they have 3 elephants that come to the fair. One of them, Minnie, there have been 3 episodes where she has either attacked her handlers or has gotten loose while transporting children. So there's also a lot of evidence about basically the misery that's endured by the wild or exotic animals in the course of being obtained, trained, confined, and kept. Basically, the regulations with regard to this are very loose. The training methods are barbaric and horrible. It involves, various forms of beatings, and there's a lot of documentation that anybody that wants to Google it can find easily online. And it's the city of Cambridge, which recently passed a ban, provided a lot of information online supporting evidence. Basically, it's hard to read through, but it's been well established that these are chronic practices among people that utilize wild or exotic animals in traveling acts. There are also not sufficient laws to protect wild or exotic animals from inhumane treatment. The Animal Welfare Act, the most recent one, was passed in 1966. Standards are minimal, and basically require that an animal be housed in an area that is sufficient for them to lie down and turn around. Their owners are required to feed them daily. They are not required to provide them freedom of choice, any sort of a natural environment. And there are no training, there are no standards whatsoever or methods of determining laws for training methods, and the training methods really are the source of most of this abuse. So the Federal Animal Welfare Act is enforced by the USDA. The USDA has approximately, again, according to the Humane Society of the U.S., about 10,000 facilities in the U.S. that they're responsible for inspecting. They have 120 inspectors that are doing this work. The standards are weak. The enforcement is insufficient. This is something that the public has become increasingly aware of that's quite disturbing. So the last thing that I want to just make note of is that public awareness in the past several years has changed dramatically. And there's been a lot of documentation. People come to things, they have their iPhone in their pocket, they take pictures, they take videos, they share it. There's a lot of documentation and incidents that have been noted online. People do the research, they look this stuff up, they Google Cumberford. There's public awareness worldwide is shifting as the result of increased exposure to the realities of this industry. So with that in mind, 44 countries around the world, all of UK, many countries in Europe, many countries in South America, Mexico, much of Canada have all enacted wild and exotic, much sweeper than what we're asking for here. They've enacted bans in recognition of the fact that there's so much wrong with this industry that it's best to ban it altogether. So in the United States, New Jersey has just recently passed a wild and exotic animal ban. This is Animals and Traveling Acts. Hawaii did as well. Illinois has an elephant ban. The state of New York has an elephant ban. The city of New York has a wild and exotic animal ban. So does LA. In Massachusetts, there are currently 9 cities and towns that have passed bans, and these again are wide bans, all of wild and exotic animals. So Pittsfield, Plymouth, Weymouth, Provincetown, Revere, Quincy, Somerville, and Cambridge have all passed wild or exotic animal bans. So it's our contention that there's a public health risk here. There's a public welfare risk here. It's inhumane to the animals. The fair is an agricultural fair. They don't need to have wild and exotic animals. And I would argue, having spent some time, there have been active protests going on at the fair for at least the last 4 years. I've been involved with them for a couple of years, and I've stood outside and I've spoken to hundreds of people on their way in. Some years we've been collecting signatures. The public support for a ban of this type, I think, is huge. People are uncomfortable with it. I think the fair can take this space. This is prime real estate at the fair. They're losing a tenant. They still got the space. They can use it for something that's more appealing to the general public. I think it would be in their best interest to do that anyway. So I don't see how this is hurting the fair. So that's pretty much it.
Questions for Martha?
Can you just talk about how you think this would be enforced?
So this is language that actually was recommended by the town. This is not something that we had decided. So the enforcement bodies would be the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health or its agent, any police officer in the town of Topsfield. And the offenses are non-criminal, so it's $100 for the first offense. The fees are low, the fines are low. Second violation, $200. Third violation, $300. And these would accrue daily. So if there are wild or exotic animals, for example, at the fair, they would be fined daily.
Who's the enforcement agency?
So it's either the Board of Selectmen, the health agent, or the police department.
And presumably, the fair might have a different view. Have we spoken to them? Are they aware of this proposal?
I know they're aware of it. I personally have written to them for the past 2 years. I've written to the executive committee. I've written to the president of the executive committee, sent it to her home, sort of asking for a dialogue or a discussion about this. And I've never had any communication back. And the first time I wrote, I had 300 people asked to be signers on the letter, and I got no response. So I really have no idea what their thinking is, what their intentions are. I'd be surprised. I think this could shape up to be a PR disaster for them if they continue to keep having an extremely elderly elephant with a sore foot, either posing for pictures or giving rides. I don't understand why there hasn't been an attempt to engage or even discuss it.
Is it simply one animal? I don't know how many animals, exotic animals are there at the fair.
So it's currently the elephant,
One elephant.
but they have also a camel, a kangaroo, a zebra. They in the past have sent, they used to have a giraffe, they in the past have sent other animals. I know they have. It's rather than just asking for an elephant ban, knowing that this organization, at least this outfit, Comerford and Sons, has a whole, if you will, stable of other animals they could sell, and over 50 citations from the USDA of complaint citations. We're hoping to move away from this, not just with elephants.
It's a singular animal that we've seen in recent years.
What's that?
It's a singular animal that's been at the fair.
It has
Well,
been,
the last couple of years, I think there's been more over the last 10, 12 years.
yeah,
Right, but in recent years,
it has been just an elephant.
yeah.
We're afraid that they will keep the elephant home and replace the elephant with,
No,
they also have a
What I'm
camera.
trying to figure out is,
What the
Does it
impact
affect
will
since
be.
we don't have them here to tell us the other side of the story,
Mhm.
what's the impact of what you're asking? And it sounds nominal if they're only bringing one in.
So the impact to the Comerford and Sons from Connecticut will be probably most significant. They come here, they make money, they're not even residents of the state. The impact to the fair, I think, is negligible, especially since they still have the space. They can find another tenant. It's not that, what's that?
Most people don't go to the fair to see the elephant.
Most
They go to the
people-
fair and the elephant happens to be there.
So it's
Yeah.
a rent as well.
Right, right.
They get the rent from which they'll have to your point, they'll have to find a way to cover.
And this would take effect if it was passed this fall.
Yes.
We talked about the bylaw, Ken, is it majority on the floor or?
Majority. Zone bylaws.
It's what again, 2/3?
Majority.
It's
It's not a
majority.
zone, it's not zoning.
Other questions? Okay, we can vote, or we can leave it recommendation pending if you want to have something from the fair come talk at a future meeting. This is one that, it's not like it's a money article that we really wanted to get out with the right information in the print warrant.
So my preference would be to give them it's disappointing that they haven't communicated. But remember with the marijuana last year, we heard no one's involved. And then the gentleman got up and shocked us all on town floor, I'd like to give, and said, no, I'd like to give somebody the chance, personally, and then, you know.
On the floor is.
Right, I'm saying, we have a, give an invite, we're gonna have a meeting in 2 weeks, or another week.
Yeah, yeah, 2
If you want to, town, you want to bring,
Yeah.
fair, you want to bring someone, fine, if not, we'll vote based on what we have for information. But we went into last year with the marijuana, having heard from the petitions that there was no objection, and the next door neighbor objected strongly, and rightfully, understandably so, but, so I'd like to, personally, I'd just like to have
It just air both sides.
us had that chance. But, that chance. Sure.
So Eric, it's your article, I'll check with the fair manager and see.
And if they don't come, then we guess it.
Yeah.
We have to see it.
And we'll just vote. On either the 8th or the 22nd. We'll have meetings both days. Everybody's clear with Martha, the understanding all the pieces of it and the rationale?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, it being 7:31, Mr. Luther.
Yes.
Welcome to the finance committee.
Yes,
It's been a
haven't
few
been here a
years.
while.
Come join the committee.
Been there.
I've served my time.
We certainly have one. Sir.
So this one's blue, right?
Yep, so, just a quick preface. One, my understanding is that the planning board had an open hearing last week. It has not concluded. So the planning board is not ready to give us their input with regard to this citizen petition article. I have yet to contact the chair of the planning board to confirm whether they can meet on the 2nd, I'm sorry, on the 8th or the 22nd. So with that as a preface, basically that procedurally, timing-wise, if we want to vote tonight, we'll be doing it without the planning board's input. So I would recommend that the outset that we wait, we do recommendation pending and talk to the planning board. I mean, just like we did the other time. So.
And pick holders for brings now.
If
what we
those
have
brings
here.
down, yes.
So I'm just going to talk about it
Please, and answer questions.
and answer any questions. Absolutely, I will defend my thesis.
Thank you.
I will begin by reading what I wrote, what I read to the at the hearing of the planning board. because I'm gonna assume that you don't have the, have that.
I did
It
send
is,
people the.
Well, maybe to expedite matters, we go to the question and answers directly, or for the benefit of the audience, I will,
I think a short summary is appropriate.
all right, I will do that. So I will begin. In 1990, the Zoning Board of Appeal considered an application by Dr. Arcidi for the establishment of a level care nursing home facility on the former Hall property on High Street in the Central Residential District. This turned out to be a rather contentious application, as the neighbors were very unhappy with the scale of the development, and a group of local architects were adamantly opposed to its appearance. The ZBA worked through the, actually, I said 9 criteria, there are only 7. 7 criteria of the site review process, and methodically worked through every one, but the last, the facility's architectural compatibility with the neighborhood. We ran into a stalemate as the applicant refused to amend its design, and the neighborhood and its group of architects refused to agree to the design as seen on the plan. The ZBA therefore denied the application, upon which the town promptly found itself in litigation over the denial. A year later, the Arcidis and the ZBA agreed to a mitigation in which an architect acceptable to both parties reviewed the plan to suggest changes if required. He did, and his recommendation became a court-ordered consent decree. The Masconomet Healthcare Center as a result of this consent decree. As a result of this rather strenuous experience, 2 years, the Planning Board and the ZBA agreed that it's best for the welfare of the Topsfield residents to limit the siting of nursing homes in the IRA and the ORA in their respective overlay business highway and business park districts. This became the 1993 ATM warrant article, number 19, that was approved overwhelmingly, 129 to 21. In 2004, Article 3, Section 302 of the Table of Permitted Uses was completely overhauled in an ATM warrant article that repealed the entire previous table and substituted therefore a new one that was adopted by the ATM vote. In the table, entry 214, hospital, was listed as NP, not permitted, for the business village and CR, the Central Residential District, and S, special permit for the remaining zone. In addition, however, the term hospital was defined as a catch-all for the usual hospital, for nursing homes, for sanitaria, for clinics, and rest homes. So it was a pretty big bag. This was in fact entirely consonant with the 1993 ATM vote, however. So everything was cool up to 2004. Then in 2005, the zoning bylaw was again amended at the ATM. This time the definition of various land uses were amended to bring them into alignment with the Industrial Classification Handbook to facilitate the job of the building inspector, who also works with the Commonwealth Building Regulations and Standards. This changed the definition of hospital to one that is an accredited facility for diagnostic and medical procedures. It remained entry 214 and given an NP in the Central Residential and Business Village for a district and an S in the remaining districts. That's entirely consistent with 1993. The rest of the former hospital catch-all became a separate table, entry 2.15, labeled community care facilities, given an S in all zoning districts. Now I claim that this was an oversight, as there was no language in the 2005 ATM warrant article being proposed to indicate a change of use permission for community care facilities from NP to S in the CR and Business Village district, as seen in entry 215. Usually when you change you make an amendment, you cite what you're amending in the article, and that wasn't done in 2005. My petition therefore seeks to reinstate the former intent of the 1993 ATM vote within the framework of the new use definitions. I note that this amendment will affect the Masconomet Health Care Center, as there are no other, will only affect the Masconomet Health Care Center, as there are no other facilities in the BB or CR districts at this time. As for the suitability of properties in the business village and central residential districts, there are a number of large properties of 5 acres or more that could accommodate a community care facility, as these have footprints typically of 30,000 square feet or greater, and also require accessory buildings and a large parking lot. Thus, these facilities are of a scale that is really incompatible with the half-acre zone districts, and they generate a substantial traffic as well. This petition will give the Topsfield residents an opportunity to explicitly vote to retain the 1993 ATM article restrictions, or to permit by special permit the siting of community facilities in all zoning districts. In other words, give them an explicit choice.
So what happens to Masconomet? Do they get grandfathered in?
Yes.
Oh, it just happens to be a grandfathered in facility, as it was between 1993 and 2004. Everything was cool there.
Yeah.
And then everything happened, and now we're going to make it cool again.
Is that a technical term?
Yes.
What's that?
That's a technical term.
Cool, yes. Oh, absolutely. So if there's any question, I can give you an earlier version I wrote with all sorts of proofs, some photostatic copies of the various excerpts and definitions and so forth, if anybody wants to see the details, the gory details of my research.
Do you anticipate any objection from the planning board?
No, I don't want, but I will not say anything more.
You talked about the central business. Also here you talked about the Business Highway North.
I have included the Business Highway North. That was not an issue in 1993. There was no Business Highway North. In talking with the planning board, they suggested that we should append the Business Highway North simply because it's a tiny little district that's pretty densely. What's that?
Where is that?
Where is it? At the conjunction of Boston Street and Ipswich Road.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin'
It's like
Donuts,
Dunkin'
gas
Right.
station.
But does it go all the way up to?
No, it goes only it goes right to the group of buildings that is a sort of a white building there.
Oh, the EBSCO building?
The EBSCO, it stops at the EBSCO building.
Yeah, so thank you.
And it doesn't even encompass Whitey's
Yes.
Country Motors Garage.
Yeah.
So it's a very small district.
Yeah.
There probably is absolutely no real estate left there. The only close one would be Skiffington's lot, but that's already in the business in the RA.
It doesn't even look like there's anything up to 5 acres there in total.
There isn't anything, but we added it because for consistency.
More questions for Holger?
No, thank you for that.
Okay, so if anybody wants this, just give me a holler and I'll make.
If it's what you sent me, I
That's
I
it,
forwarded
yes.
it to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then,
The planning board is meeting April 2nd for a vote to continue the hearing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and we'll have meetings April 8th and April 22nd. So we can vote tonight, or we can wait for the planning board feedback, as we do on the other zoning articles.
I think I would prefer to wait for that. I would agree.
But everybody's clear, we don't have more questions for Holger, we don't need to drag him back in. Unless he wants to come.
I'll be happy to.
I'm saying.
Oh, I just can't wait to come back.
How's 11:30 sound?
I have it in my bag.
Okay. Okay, thank you then.
All right then.
Okay.
He misses the model.
Well.
Oh, yeah, I
he
missed a
might
whole lot.
fight over that.
Hi, Olga.
Hi.
Where's,
Okay, so here we are, back to department budget review and approval. Dana had presented his thoughts on how to tie value of education, cost of education.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say it nearly as articulate as well as Dana, but it's more like last year, we had good schools and had bad roofs. And now we seem to have good roofs and schools aren't as good. And I sort of wish we had the discussion last year so we could have factored it all in when we were thinking about it, because it might have been a way to hang on to the roofs longer and address some of these concerns.
I think it's been a theme of years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's always a demand for the school.
Yeah, I added that a little bit. I mean, I think we gave pretty resounding feedback that our preference would
Over a
be
couple
they,
years.
for a couple of years, that they
Right.
pursue one roof and not two at the same time. When they decided to go for two, then it came in
With
the
the state
guidelines.
grant to help.
With the state grant to help, yeah, but again, and that's why,
Right.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's another delta.
Right, but the town stepped forward big time
Yeah.
on the two roofs.
Yes, absolutely.
And historically, every few years, there's an education override for either Masconomet or the elementary, and it sort of bounces back and forth depending on where the enrollment's headed. And the elementary is inched up recently, but for years it was
Sure.
down. And Masconomet now, I think, is trending down a
Did
little.
we actually receive the funds from the state grant? Those actually post
For the
roofs?
But, yeah, they didn't come in.
It's a progress
yeah.
payment.
The bill, pay it, submit it,
The
reimburse.
total project's over $7 million, and the band that's out right now, with the partly bond, is $5 million too.
So, on, we've talked about this all the time, but the contracts with steps and goals grows faster than the 2.5. So every 3-ish years, if all things remain equal, there either needs to be an override or they need to go for larger class sizes, right? So that's one. Two, the last 5 years, we've had them deplete the, in revolving account. So last year's budget, I believe, was over 100 grand, 150 grand from a revolving account that was revolving, okay? And then you have the loss of the chapter 1 funding. So if you take not being able to apply from the revolving funds plus the loss in funding, that's about 300 grand. And then you take the amount of the more normal 250-ish override, it ends up getting almost back to the same spot. So it's not, I don't think there's anything funny going with the numbers. I think they call the term level service for a reason. Right? And so last year, yeah, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if it's something like 600,000, you know, that's almost 2% of the tax levy. And so you could expect your tax bills, if the override passes, to go up by an additional 2% beyond whatever is baked in already. When it was a little over $1 million override, that was more in the 4%. Yeah, it's actually 2.4%.
The average tax bill is,
$10,000 if you want to talk round numbers.
So when you spend time with the school budget, you realize that these are needed to get back to the level. It's not doing any of the initiatives that they want to do too, right? And so it's trade-offs, I guess.
Yeah, and really, the only lever the school has to pull when enrollment is steady is class size.
But it's the contract, though.
Right, but a lot of it is steps and levels.
Mandated non-funded in our scale hurts us. So when we're told that we have to have a certain level of amount of services to provide, those costs just keep going up, right? And if they did an analysis on net dollars to actual, well, I'll stop there. I've been liaison for however many years now. I'm like, would love to have a consistent plan and consistent vision.
And some of that is due to changeover in personnel. We have a new
That's what I was gonna
superintendent
say, there's a new
who's
that's exactly where I was going.
found his
Yeah.
feet
Yes.
and has a plan.
Has a vision, has a plan, and now they're working on it.
And, you know, I mean, the police had an idea and came up with a plan. And they think it's cost neutral, and that's a fine thing.
Or better.
Or better, maybe. And, you know, but that's not always possible.
Is that plan, I know we're not talking about it this year, but is that still just now on a back burner? Or is it
We'll plan.
on the transformative way we?
They're still working on that.
Still working on it, okay.
I think it's, they prioritize level services, program restoration, and then with their total number. There are training dollars, so remember, a lot of that we heard was about training, right? And so that is part of that transformation period. Some of the schools have been under the superintendent behind, so we have questions, but I think I'm paraphrasing.
Correct.
We've talked about it a lot, so I'm just going to real quick notes here.
So, I mean, the dollar amount is big, but like John said, maybe half of it is other revenue that they've been able to apply in the past that, you know, it doesn't, it's, when you scoop a revolving fund, it's like using free cash. You only get to use it once.
Before we vote on this,
Well, okay.
I was gonna say, before we vote on this, or on a number, I'm interested to hear how we think we might wanna deal with the technology piece, because we have the one-time tech that's
Right.
spend, and then also $100,000 being baked into the base budget there.
Although
it's not.
not in
It's
this,
not.
not in this level
Not in this
service
number,
piece.
not in this number, so
Right.
in the plan,
In
In the plan, but
in
if
the
it gets
big
lopped off,
picture,
then it's not.
yeah.
They can change it.
I understand that.
I mean, you could look at it, if you're doing a big chunk of technology out of free cash, you could say, well, wait a year to put it in the base budget.
Right.
Because
That's what I'm
we
trying
can
to
take
understand.
care of the big chunks
It's not in that
with
number.
free cash. It's not in the 593,000.
If they spend it according to how this makes sense.
The 593, is that what the Board of Selectmen has approved, or is that where they're leaning towards and they're gonna vote for?
That's what they discussed.
So
They
they
have
haven't-
not voted,
Yes.
but that was a sense of meeting, just like we went around with a sense of meeting. It's sort of a
Okay,
push me, pull you.
okay. So ultimately, at the end of the day, our recommendation is gonna be based on what they bring back, right? I mean, we're putting in the 593 now, assuming that they go with that, but if they came back at 0 or at $1 million or
Well,
whatever.
the question is, what would they put on the ballot question?
Exactly.
And their sense was that they would have a ballot question with a number and a FY18 level services number was what they were talking about. But if we came back and said, you know,
0 or 1 million, just either side.
or whatever, 300,000 or whatever, then I think we'd be doing a little bit of sniper diplomacy back and forth.
Right, and I guess the point being is that, and where I'm going with this a little bit of, you know, last week, we were kind of implied, or directly stated that it's not we're not elected, we're appointed, it's not our job to speak for the voters, and we're not. So I want to be clear, when I spoke last week, I think everyone here, that was my assessment of what I believe I would support.
Yeah.
And then, at the same time, I was also concerned that something above that might not get the support that I think the schools at a minimum need.
Which would leave them in a hole.
Would leave them
of
behind the scenes.
Which is the biggest
$300,000.
concern,
Which is the
which
biggest
is
one,
why
right.
the schools are feeling all our pushback.
Right.
because We feel that the
Yeah.
total number is too good.
Right. But ultimately, you know, and what I'm getting at now is just, I want to make sure, we're gonna go and vote something.
That's
as
a
support.
recommendation.
Yes, we're gonna vote for our recommendation that's based on what we understand the school, the Board of Selectmen is gonna be in alignment with for what they're gonna put on the warrant,
On the ballot.
on the ballot. Sorry, on the ballot.
On the ballot, because our number is, it's our Article 3.
Right.
So we're putting this number.
But we need those two numbers in alignment or else
Correct.
it doesn't work.
Well, you can
The warrant, the lower of those two numbers would become the approved number that it voted in.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You can only spend what town meeting has appropriated, and
I think it
you
needs
can
both.
only tax what's been ballot question voted.
So it's the lower of the two.
So the elementary school is clearly requested $1 million. Why, under what rationale would we vote a different number? The board of selectmen has not said what they're putting in the warrant.
Well-
It's too high. They've given us a draft number.
That's not, they've not,
They've not voted, it's a sense
Correct.
of their meeting and what they heard us discussing last week.
so the elected officials have given us $1 million, no other elected officials have given us a different number.
Well, they've
What
given us a
basis?
sense of the meeting.
That's
Yeah.
nice, but
Because
I
they're
would want to go to
also-
the bank with it.
If this wasn't our last meeting beforehand, I understand exactly where we're going. They should be giving us their direction, is what you're saying. We have a deadline now that we have to figure out whether we do. Right?
The recommendation at town meeting is ours. People can amend that, and then the question is, what's on the ballot?
Because
Have we ever taken information given to us and just unilaterally, as appointed officials, change the warrant to what, the recommendation to what we think it should be?
we have, in the base elementary school budget that we approve above guidelines, we would vote in that number and change that. And it's the same thing here, it's an Article 3. Because it says subject to an override.
But we voted in the number that they requested.
Right, and so,
They did not request for.
Well-
no, but on the base
Well,
budget in
the
prior
budget
years,
talks.
if we give them a number higher than guideline, that's an arbitrary number that we're approving. And so we're following the same procedure of the banded chart of where we get comfortable on that chart, on the
And
prioritizations.
where we think, it will fit within a balanced budget, and if it won't fit within a balanced budget, what's left over?
But in this case, we've been told they don't want that. They want $1 million.
And then we,
So I'm not trying to convince
Yeah.
this committee otherwise. Where I am is regardless of where this goes, if it's not what they asked for, which I have an opinion about, if it's some other number that, we think this is what the two groups think, my vote is likely an abstention on that. I don't know if this goes without a recommendation. That we-
The whole three is.
the Article 3 is without,
Okay.
our recommendation is with no override.
That's the entire article.
It's not-
So,
Well-
so another way to think about it though is that Masco comes in regularly and says, we recommend this, a certain number one way or the other. They did last year, and we ended up saying for the override portion of it, their school committee came in and asked for an override last year, and we said no. So it's, I know where you go. We could still say, okay, it's $1 million and we recommend no. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're having those conversations, or when the police come in or anyone else come in, and granted, they're all board of selectmen oversight, but we still have those conversations about, yeah, that's more money than we think is appropriate, right? Ultimately, now it's a different mechanism because,
It's the mechanism, the fact that it's a buried in Article 3.
yeah,
Well,
It's
some
not very
of the budgets
Part of
are.
it. No, that's what I'm just saying, it's relative to the budget.
I guess the difference is, they're seeking some advice and counsel on that. It's not the case here.
who's thinking about something?
When they come in and ask a number, we say, we don't think that's the right number, we think it's something else.
Yeah, but the square are the advisory body to the selectmen, right? And they've asked us for our advice.
Well, we're the
We're not-
advisory body to
To the
town
town
meeting.
meeting. And based on that, the selectmen have come and asked our advice. Unfortunately, the problem is, from my opinion, what I'm struggling with, we don't have a lot of choices. We have to do something tonight, I think. But we're struggling with, they've asked for our advice, they haven't given us their results. The
Well,
result, right?
they haven't done a final vote yet.
Right,
But they're meeting now, should we tell them we can't vote until we have the number?
Sure.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, to your point, and I get, school committee is an elected board, they come with their, fully get that, and I'm uncomfortable somewhat
But they're
overriding.
not listening to our feedback.
Understood. The Board of Selectmen is an elected board, and ultimately, they're responsible for putting what's on the ballot. And ultimately, they have that overall accountability, and so our job is to give them our advice,
I think we asked them for a number.
and then we get their number, and we vote based on that, is what I see,
Me too.
is the
But the
appropriate
problem is-
approach.
One of the problems is, we make recommendations, we don't approve or disagree.
Right.
I'm not sure it's always seen that way by everybody.
Yeah.
Some people disregard what we recommend, other people think we recommend it, that's the right way to go.
Yeah.
So we're kind of a unique role, and it's misunderstood a little bit, I think.
I agree.
Somebody has to make a motion.
Yeah,
And it's
recommended
us.
action is a motion.
I understand it.
Yeah.
But it's making that clear, I understand.
John, would you like to go down, or do you want me to
I'll
go
go
down?
We need
That's
to,
exactly-
assume, they,
I mean,
I suspect, but I'd like, you know, a point of order to that
Okay, so I,
process, to follow the process, I think that makes sense.
so I sort of made a mistake by putting in the model.
Well,
I apologize.
No,
No,
it's
no,
okay, the model's
no.
a draft.
Yeah, it's a draft, and we need to work off of what
We
we
make
think is gonna
assumptions
be,
for
and
the
we
models all the time
Okay.
until we get to the final balanced budget.
and as far as under or over the levy limit, it doesn't matter.
No, I totally agree. I'm just-
It's part of the number law.
But as part of the discussion, I jumped the gun a
You
little
can
bit.
change it on the fly.
Yeah. That's actually Kathy's fault.
It's a model, and it's a model that shows where the number's at. Now, Dana, the trust fund commissioners, were,
Trust fund commissioners.
I don't see
now they're on, now they're on.
Oh, they were.
Would you grab the head of the table? Well, the other hand over there. Good, how are you? Thank you. Richard. So following our meeting last week, we had a discussion about some additional funds requested by the library. I believe the number was $21,500 to do some repairs. We had some roof work, some painting, some carpeting work. We have a lot of information about the Gould Trust Funds, Part B. We had a copy of the 1989 document from the courts, indicating what was allowed to be spent from there. We had an update from last summer on what funds were available in Part A, Part B, and income. I will share, we do not have the legal opinion that the library trustees, I think, requested from legal counsel in terms of interpreting. We didn't have that information. But based on our interpretation of it, we voted no action with regard to the request from the library for the $21,500. But we also recognized that we had not talked to the trust commissioners. Felt strongly that they may likely have a different perspective than we had on the use of those particular funds. And I sent an email, Mr. Strachan. Strawn, actually. Strawn, excuse me. I haven't seen you for 15 days, I'm sorry.
I stay low.
And I tried to lay out that last week, and he was kind enough to respond to that with some of his